let's start this. Good evening, everyone. This is Jim Ellsbury, Associate Pastor at Beacon of Hope in Clearwater, Florida. Again, I'm sitting in for Pastor Marcia, who is still recovering from her knee surgery. So just as a reminder, you can see this Wednesday night Bible study and all of our Wednesday night Bible studies, our sermons going back to January of 2021, plus the teachings that I have done on our YouTube page. That's, you just go to YouTube, look for uppercase BOHM space lowercase global, and you'll find all the teachings there. Just want to give a shout out to Madeline, who has been very faithful in uploading all of these. And also, when you go there, please subscribe. So that way it doesn't cost anything, but you'll be notified when another video is uploaded. So we're starting the second round of speeches and responses in the book of Job. We had our first round where it was Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zohar would say something, then Job responded. Now we're starting the second round. And if you've been watching these, you'll notice, we talked about it last week, it just starts escalating into name calling, basically. In Job chapter 15, verse 1, Eliphaz says, he's accusing Job basically of not being wise. Does a wise man answer with his blustery knowledge? Or fill his belly with the east wind? So he basically just saying, Job, you're not wise. You're not being wise. And then he says, does he argue with useless talk, with words that have no value? So he's telling Job what? What's he telling Job at this right now, at this point?
He's lying. He's not telling the truth.
That he's not telling the truth. That he's
wisdom. He's not coming.
He got no sense.
Yeah.
Job, you got no sense, basically, is what he's saying.
You're a fool.
Yeah, well, yeah, you're a fool, is basically what Eliphaz is saying.
Own up to it.
Then he goes on and says something worse, I think. In verse 4 of chapter 15, he says, but you even break off piety, or literally it's fear, and hinder meditation before God. So what is Eliphaz accusing him of now? Job, you're in my way. You're in the way of my worship. Because of you, Job, I can't worship God. You break off piety. You're saying you don't have to fear God.
Yeah, so
and you hinder meditation before God.
And he also refuses his counsel. You're not even listening to what your friends are saying or what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it says your own mouth condemns you, not I.
Yeah, that's verse 6. Your own mouth condemns you. Not I'm not condemning you, Eliphaz.
Yeah, you're doing it yourself.
Yeah, Job, you're doing this to yourself. And is that true? Is it false? What's going on here?
Well, it's true to them because they don't know any better. They're coming from where they've been taught to be coming from their whole lives. They were taught that way, and they don't have the Holy Spirit to instruct them like we have today. And I don't know, Jesus didn't die yet.
Well, true. We do have the advantage being on this side of the cross. But Eliphaz in verse 5 says, your sin inspires your mouth. So again, Eliphaz is accusing. It's kind of a broken record. All they can do is say, Job, you had to have done something wrong. Mm-hmm. In order for this to have happened to you, you had to do something wrong. Your sin inspires your mouth. And you choose the language of the crafty. Okay, and what did Jesus say about our words? Where do they start?
From the heart.
From the heart. Okay? So what they're basically saying, what are they saying about Job's heart?
His heart is not right with God.
It's not right with God. That Job, your heart is not right with God. You're talking what is coming out, what is in your heart. So they're accusing him of not being right with God. And I agree. In their mindset, which was very limited at this point, they didn't know, well, they didn't even know what Moses knew about God, what Moses and the Israelites knew about God. Okay, so they're kind of groping in the dark. I guess. I mean, there is a lot of wisdom here. There's a lot of truth here. But they're still kind of groping in the dark when it comes to knowing about God.
Yeah,
They have very limited knowledge.
Well, most of the time in their lives, you know, as they were growing in the years that they were growing, anybody that was oppressed or evil was done to they deserved it. They
Right.
deserved it. The people deserve what they get.
Right. Well,
Those are their
remember,
lifestyles.
this is probably around the time of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. This probably is not in the same place, obviously, and they don't have quite the same revelation, but they do have some revelation of God, because they use one of the names that actually Abraham used a lot, the Almighty. So that kind of puts it right in that time period. So what was known about God was very limited. So then he goes on, and it just gets worse in verse 7. Were you the first man ever born? Were you brought forth before the hills? Did you listen in secret to God's counsel? Do you limit wisdom to yourself? What would you do if Eliphaz was your friend? And he said this to you.
It would hurt your heart because you know he's a friend, you know?
Yeah, and these are strong accusations. I mean, the first one's kind of I don't even know what you'd call it. What, were you the first man ever born? That's really being sarcastic.
Yeah.
Were you the first man ever born? Were you brought forth before the hills? Did you listen in on God's secret counsel? Do you have it in with God? Do you know what's going on? And when I read this, obviously he's accusing Job of self-righteousness at this point. You know, look, you seem to think like you know everything. And yet,
he's losing his faith.
Job is, yeah.
Yes.
And Eliphaz, what is Eliphaz showing right here? He was accusing Job of being self-righteous. What is Eliphaz showing here?
Same thing.
Same thing, his own self-righteousness.
Yes. Exactly.
He's showing that he's self-righteous. He's accusing Job of these things. You know, what do you know down in verse 9? What do you know that we don't know? What do you understand that we don't understand? I'm just as good as you, Job. How dare you think I'm not? Okay? Hardly the basis for a healthy relationship, don't you think?
Mm-hmm.
That's just not the basis for a healthy relationship. And he goes on in that same vein, most of this chapter, going on down to verse 14. What is man that he should be pure, or one born of woman that he should be righteous? Okay, now he's got that right. We know that from the rest of the Bible. No one is born righteous. Okay? We all are born with that tendency to sin. And we all
do.
We all do. We fall for that tendency.
Yes.
So that part's right, but again, what's the one thing I keep pointing out as we study through Job? They just can't leave well enough alone. They just can't stop while they're ahead. Because he goes on to say, God places no trust in his holy ones. If even the heavens are not pure in his eyes, how much less man who is abominable and corrupt, who drinks evil like water. Okay, that's a pretty negative view of humanity, don't you think? What does that tell you Eliphaz felt about humans?
Not worth it.
Basically, they're not worth anything. I mean, the men, he's accusing all men of drinking evil like water. Now that's pretty strong.
Yeah, so if he's this angry, being against people, why is he even there talking with Job?
That's a good question. Because obviously he's not showing too much friendship.
Yeah,
there's true friendship to Job. And then,
there's no compassion there.
And I love verse 12. I'll explain it to you. Okay, Eliphaz. It's like he's accused Job of not knowing anything. And then Eliphaz steps in here and says, I'll explain it to you. Listen to me. What I've seen, I'll declare. What wise man declares, hiding nothing from the tradition of their ancestors. And then he goes on to give this whole, starting in verse 20, basically to the end of this chapter, this horrifying description of what happens to evil men. Okay? It's just all these horror, if you're evil, all these things are going to happen to you. And basically, under the kind of the undercurrent there is, Job, all of these things did happen to you. Okay? You lost everything. You lost your wealth. You lost your health. You lost your family. And he says, this is what happens to wicked people. So, he just, this whole chapter is just very, very negative.
So he's starting to believe that he's not worth anything.
Well, what's happening here is, no, Eliphaz thinks he's everything. He just thinks he's God's gift
No,
to Job.
Job. He's thinking he's not worth anything.
But we're going to find out here in just a second what Job's thinking.
Okay.
But what's happening is here, there's a divide has occurred. Okay? You've got Job asserting that he's done nothing wrong, and you've got the three friends over here who keep making the accusations worse and worse and worse. So they've got this big divide going. What happens when you have friends or acquaintances, and that starts to happen in that relationship?
You kick him to the curb.
Or they kick you to the curb.
Well, yeah, somebody kicks somebody. And it's
Basically,
done.
what happens to the relationship? It falls apart.
Yes, it does.
I mean, because if you're going to be mutually accusing each other of stuff, you just
Nothing left.
Yeah, you
That's
can.
exactly right. There's nothing left. There's no common ground on which to base the friendship.
No compassion for each other.
And no compassion. Certainly Job's friends did. I think initially, remember when we started out, when Eliphaz did his first speech, I think he really kind of wanted to help, but again, he did not understand what was going on, so he had the wrong starting place, I guess is a good way to look at it. He did not know, remember, what went on in heaven with Job, or with Satan and God. So Eliphaz made his assumptions from the wrong starting place. It's like a runner in a race starting on the wrong track.
Yeah.
He started from the wrong place, so he's not going to end up where he needs to be. And all three of the friends have done that so far.
Well, all three of them have done nothing but bad mouthing. They've not done anything to help. They just keep criticizing him. What did you do?
Well, they want him to come to terms with his evilness so that, he can either die and give up, and
Get it over with.
actually get right with God before he dies,
Yeah,
because he's got to
he
admit his
believes.
sin so that he can, stop feeling sorry for himself sitting in that pit scraping his wounds,
Yeah, they're sitting like that. Neither one is going to give in to the other.
Right.
Well, and that's what I'm saying. They're only going further and further
Right.
apart.
Yeah, and Job is not even listening after a time. He doesn't
Well,
want to,
Let's start chapter 16, which is Job's reply to Eliphaz. Then Job replied, I've heard many things like these before. What miserable comforters are you all?
Yes.
Will there be an end to your windy words? You're absolutely right on. Or what provokes you that you answer? Okay? Y'all are miserable counselors.
he's looking for someone to help step between him and God and find out what's going on. Why am I going through this?
He needs an advocate. He needs
yeah,
an intercessor.
And, we have Jesus there for us. He didn't have that at that time.
Right.
But he wants
And then
that.
his
Well, but the
friends
friends, but again, true, the friends could have prayed for him.
But they haven't.
But they haven't. And, well, I won't give it away, but that gets turned around at the end. So,
Yeah, he does. Job does pray for them.
that's what God told him to.
Mm-hmm.
In verse 4, he says, I could also speak like you. If you were in my place, I could pile up words against you, and I could shake my head at you, but I would strengthen you with my words, and comfort from my lips would bring you relief. So Job is saying, I wouldn't treat me like you're treating. I wouldn't treat you like you're treating me.
Right.
But he said, and here, he goes on about, if I speak, my pain is not relieved. If I refrain from speaking, how much of it goes away? Surely now God has worn me out. You've devastated my entire household. You've seized me. And it has become a witness. My leanness rises up against me and testifies against me. God, you did all this stuff. In verse 12, I was in peace and he shattered me. He has seized me by the neck and crushed me. He has made me his target. And those are his accusations against God.
What verse was that?
11 and 12.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then in verse 14, he breaks through against me time and again. I've sewed sackcloth on my skin. I've buried my horn in the dust. My face is reddened because of weeping. My eyelids, there is a deep darkness. Although there is no violence in my hands, and my prayer is pure. So Job still maintains, I'll give him this, he's maintaining his righteousness before God, even though he pours out accusing God of treating him and horribly. And again, Job is starting from the wrong place too. It's not just the friends that start from the wrong place.
Yeah,
But
Job
where
doesn't know.
But he's human. He's coming from a human side too. He's not coming from a pious side. He's coming from the human side, the carnal. He's living in it right now. He's being tortured right now. He's being piled on by everything. His friends are condemning him. His life is being condemned, but yet he's not cursing God.
No. So far, you're absolutely right. So far, he has not cursed God.
No, he hasn't.
And that what was the thing that when Satan went before God, you know,
He will curse you to
he
your
will
face,
curse
God.
you to your face. That's what
And
the accusation.
Even though he's putting out all these accusations, he's still not cursing God.
Like, the only thing that really where he falls short is because he condemns him on his own life from the
Right.
beginning. That's where he falls short.
Well, and Job doesn't understand. Job doesn't have a clue. Now, I admit, if this stuff happened to us, it'd be horrifying. But what advantage do we have over Job that
We've got
Job
Jesus.
didn't have?
We've got Jesus, a way to get to God directly.
We have that, but I was just thinking, what book are we studying?
Yeah. But also,
What book are we studying?
Job.
Job. We have the advantage because we have the book of Job. We know what goes on behind the scenes. So we have that understanding. We can start from that one point. Becky.
he's always saying that God gave him all these different things. Not once has he ever given thought that it's the devil doing this to him.
Well, okay, that's a good thought, and we'll just take a little diversive trip here. Back in Job's day, they didn't have much knowledge, not just of God, but also of Satan. The word in Hebrew that most Bibles translate Satan, it'll have in the margin the accuser. That's literally what it means, the accuser. The doctrine, what we know about Satan grew through the Bible. Back in Job's day, about the only thing they knew about Satan was he was in the garden as a serpent.
Yeah, but through our day-to-day life, there's always good and bad. So why would they not think that there's something out there that is not of God?
Well, they might have, but again, remember, we're talking 4,000 years ago, so their understanding would have been limited. Most of the religions back then were almost dualistic. Equal good, equal bad. Like, well, yin and yang. Yin and yang, whatever. Okay, and we know that is not true because even in the first part of Job, Satan could only do as much as God allowed him to do.
Yes, which is
He was on a leash.
which
Okay,
is
Satan is
quite
on
a
Satan
bit.
is on a leash.
Done everything but kill him.
Right. He can only do what God allows him to do.
I mean, what could he possibly do after what he's already been through?
Right, and probably it would be a relief to Job if he was dead. So.
Yeah, he's already prayed to be dead.
Right. Job goes on to say here at the end of chapter 16, even in verse 19, and I love this. Again, it's one of those moments of clarity for Job. Even now, my witness is in heaven, my advocate is on high. My intercessor is my friend, as my eyes pour out tears to God. And he contends with God on behalf of man.
Well, it says here in mine, it says, my friends scorn me, on 16:20, my friends scorn me, but my eyes poured out tears unto God.
See, I have a footnote here. Let's see what it says. This is a very bizarre Bible. Well, not bizarre. The first two words of this verse are problematic. So, it can also mean it can mean scorner or mediator. A lot of Hebrew words are like that. They mean opposite ends of the spectrum for some reason. And this is apparently one of them. So,
His call pants therefore effort to pronounce that poor means to interpret ambassador have
yeah, see, that's what I'm saying. It can be both. Yeah, it can be both. So either way, my friends scorn me, but my eye pour out tears to God, or my intercessor is my friend. And he contends with God on behalf of man, as man pleads for his friend. So when I read this, I almost put markings in the margin, letters and symbols and stuff to mark things. And I almost put my little green M in the margin here, which is any messianic prophecy. You should see the book of Isaiah. It's just got one of those all the way through it. I almost put that here because this translation, which is the New English translation, you would love this one. You would. It almost sounds like he's talking about Jesus, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Even now, my witness is in heaven, my advocate is on high, my intercessor is my friend, and as my eyes pour out tears to God, and he, this intercessor, contends with God on behalf of man. That really sounds like Jesus to me.
Yeah.
Okay. Allie, Bernie, any comments?
Can I read this version too? This is International Standard Version. My friends mock me while my eyes overflow with tears to God, crying for him to attribute between this man and God as a human being does with his fellow neighbor. For when only a few years have lapsed, I've started down a path from which I'll never return.
Mm-hmm. For the years that lie ahead are few, he's already thinking, I don't have much time left. So again, he has these moments. I gotta. Well, what can I say? God spoke.
Well, how many days is going on? You know.
Well, Pastor said
How long is
one
he
commentary
sitting
it's
in
about 9 months total.
How long is he sitting in that sackcloth?
Well, we're probably about 3 months into it by now.
I would say my time is almost over too. Is he eating? I mean.
I know. Well, I think he says earlier that just nothing tastes. It's mentioned something about not tasting good and all that. And I figure, I think about Job having these moments of enlightenment. If God can make a donkey speak, then he can give Job moments of enlightenment. And Job needs to hold on to those, is what he needs to do. Because this is a pretty positive thing. I have a witness. I have an intercessor in heaven. Okay? And he's pleading my case. But then, like his friends, he just doesn't shut up. Okay? He just doesn't leave well enough alone. Chapter 17, my spirit is broken, my days are faded out. The grave awaits me. Surely mockery is with me, my eyes must dwell on their hostility. He's just right back to it. He's just right back to the negative.
Right.
No, because that's what's coming at him too, is the negative from all his friends.
Right.
Hostility. You think they're just saying this stuff.
Yeah,
They're probably really going at him, you know, like we do with our own friends. You know, like when someone really messes up, I confront them. It's like, look, where are you coming from? You know.
I can't imagine that. But you're right. And then Job just dishes it right back to them. So again, it's getting to be this endless cycle. You know, and down starting in verse 10, it's Job is anticipating death. You know, he says in verse 13, if I hope for the grave to be my home, if I spread out my bed in darkness, if I cry out to corruption, you are my father, and to the worm, my mother or my sister. Where then is my hope? And my hope, who sees it? You know, so he's anticipating. And I get that Job would maybe want to die. I understand.
Well, he thinks it. My spirit is crushed. My days are over. It's the grave for me.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, my spirit is broken. My days have faded out. The grave awaits me.
That's
Well, I mean,
Giving up.
Yeah.
Well,
how much
he
more
is.
can the devil give him?
Hey, at least he stayed as long as he did. I wouldn't have made the first day.
I agree. Or you know, we would have acted out much
I mean,
more
come on, look
rationally.
at how bad we get when we hurt or stub our toe, you know? You know, I'm just saying.
Quite
look
often.
how quick we are to turn.
People with whatever they're going through will just flat out do suicide because they can't handle it.
Well, what I mean,
This guy, he's just
that's
sticking
common.
with it.
They lost all their hope, you know? People
Well,
lost
yeah.
their hope, you know?
That's a common response.
Yeah,
And when people are in pain, what do they try and do?
get out
Get out
of
of the
pain.
pain.
Get out of the pain. And what do they turn to?
Whatever it is, whatever they can get.
Exactly, whatever works.
Yeah, whatever works.
Whatever works. However, does it ever really work?
No.
No. Okay,
The
anybody?
only
know
way
that.
is through Jesus and God. That's it.
Exactly.
Yeah, but they don't know it at the time.
No,
Right, they don't.
Not
they
here
don't-
because they don't know the devil exists.
Right.
Yeah.
But
But
eventually,
even today, people don't know, you know. Even today, people still do the same thing. They self-medicate. They'll still push it to the limits as much as they can, you know.
Because they don't
They don't
have
wanna be in
anything
reality, that's
tangible
why.
to hold on to.
Yeah, well, they don't have a personal relationship with
No,
Jesus.
they don't.
Mhm.
They don't.
well, except I know a lot of people who do have a personal relationship with Jesus that are just as caught up in addictions.
Yeah.
Um,
They believe that God has
You
a
know, I
plan.
mean, sometimes it's easier, I think, for people to fall back onto what gives them temporary relief. Because if you fall back on God
Not
may
insane.
require some big changes in your life. And I think that's why people who honestly know God, and I've known a bunch in my life, still are bound by something. Because
Bound
it's-
with guilt.
Because they don't turn all the way to him.
Exactly, and that's a hard thing to do. That's it's a process, and
They say you must be abased before you're abound. You know, you must be brought as low as you can be brought.
Well,
You turn to God.
like for an addict, you have to hit bottom.
Yeah.
It has to so destroy your life that then you turn to God. Now, Job is actually, if you remember from last week, he's actually said, "Why don't you appear to me?" Remember we talked about it. Why don't you appear to me, God? Tell me to
Yes.
my face why this is happening. So
Yeah.
Job's getting there. We have one more go around with Bildad and Zohar. I'll just give a little preview, and then this person named Elihu shows up, a young man, and he berates the friends and Job. And then guess who shows up on the scene? God shows up. But that's way down the line yet. So, so again, here we go with Job. Well, Eliphaz accusing Job, accusing them, but maintaining his own righteousness, and it just continues to get worse.
Well, I think it's also because in the end, Job is gonna have to pray for these people that were so harsh to him when he was going through.
And that's humbling.
And I think that's part of it too, because you know, it's gonna it's breaking him and making him a softer person in reality. Because sometimes when you go through something and you're in the midst of it, when you get through it to the other end, you're there for the people that need you to be there for them.
Don't give away the ending.
Oh,
Don't give away the ending. But there's a whole lot in that last chapter.
BJ,
Yeah.
I have a question about the scorning, you know, from the friends. Why is it, I mean, I feel like in the story that they were all Christians. Is that not right?
No, they're not. Well, they're not Christians because Jesus hasn't come yet. They all had
So those
limited.
friends are not Christian. Okay.
Right,
now
they all had limited knowledge of God because they lived about the same time as Abraham.
Okay.
This takes place about the same time as Abraham, about 4,000 years ago. So they had a very limited knowledge of God. They usually, the only place you find, well, most of the way in the book, it's always either the Almighty or just God. There's no combinations. There's no. The revelation about God was very limited at this time.
So he had a bad influence around him most of this time when he was going through all this.
Yeah, those three friends were a pretty bad influence.
You got no comfort from anybody.
Right.
All right, thank you for clarifying.
Oh yeah, no problem. No problem. Any other questions? That's okay. No, I only wanted to do 3 chapters. All right, well, looks like we're about done. Any final comments from anyone?
Poor Job.
Job got
Job
tortured.
tortured. With all this, he's still hanging in there.
God bless.
Yeah.
He's safe.
Alrighty.
You say-
Watch
Some
tomorrow.
friend from Lottie flew from New York after the meeting.
Oh, okay.
Well, if you watch tomorrow.
Alrighty, sounds good.
Yeah, he hasn't
Alright, Pastor John.
attempted suicide at
See
all.
you soon. Sunday.
No, he's made some pretty nasty comments, I agree, but he's not committed suicide, nor has he cursed God.
Right.
He's
Right.
still held, remember at the end of the 2nd chapter, Job still held to his integrity. He trusted God. Now, I'm thinking that's starting to waver a bit by this point. He's questioning some. I think he wonders, why is this happening to me? And that in a larger sense is called the problem of evil. If you've ever dealt with any atheists, that's one of the first things they bring up. If God is all powerful, why is there evil in the world? And then they don't want to hear your answer. So, at least that's my experience. I have a coworker, former coworker, who's purportedly an atheist, but I think he's actually a pagan. But because I think he worships the pagan deities. But he always likes to post, that thing about, well, if God is all powerful, then why did he allow evil and all that? And it's like, you know what? I'm kind of like Job. I don't know.
Well,
I know he gave us free will, which was the biggest gamble God could do. And we live in a fallen world, so things are going to happen. And there will come a day. I think what the atheists don't realize is, and what Job doesn't realize yet, is there will come a day when all the evil deeds will be paid, will have to be paid for. There is coming a day of reckoning, and we know that. God allows it because, well, part of the reason is he wants everyone to repent. He doesn't want to see anybody go to hell. He wants to give people time to repent, which is why he doesn't just stop it now.
I think it's because if everything was good all the time, why worry about anything going bad? And by having bad things happen to us, it gives us the opportunity to look towards God for guidance. Because with that, once you really start focusing on Jesus and praying, your problems get less and less.
It promotes our dependence on God.
Yes.
That's kind of summing it up, I guess. It promotes our dependence on God. And, we know, I don't know all of God's counsel.
No, none of us
I have
does.
I have a set of questions I'm going to ask when I get up there.
You got them written down so you don't forget?
I think I'll probably remember when I get there.
Do you think a lot of the people that you were discussing a little bit ago, do you think like with Job, they get all tied up in their situations and stuff, even though they're believers in God, they just don't see their way out of a situation?
That could be.
Yeah.
I mean, just because somebody gets saved doesn't mean that poof, all the problems go away. Everything, you're instantly healed inside and out. I wish it was that way. That sure would make life easy. But again, if we didn't have struggles, we wouldn't have to depend on God.
Yeah, like the alcoholics say, if you work it, it works.
Yes. Work it, it works. But you have, Paul said, work out your salvation with fear and trembling. You work out your salvation, for it is God who works within
In God,
you.
isn't there a growth thing though? Don't you have to meet certain criteria to say that you're actually walking with God? I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, isn't there a hierarchy in the Lord as there is in Satan? You know, there's a hierarchy, you know what I'm saying?
Only among the angels.
But in mankind too, the closer you walk to God, like Enoch walked so close to God that God took him.
Right.
So you can reach it here. You can reach that part in yourself through the Word and through your knowledge in the Word. You can reach that. It's been attained once.
Twice.
Yeah. Well,
Elijah.
yeah. But you know what I'm saying over there.
Well, and I think those are just,
But the people
rare occasions.
the people that don't live up to it, they're not grown in the Word. They're not putting God first. They're not studying to show themselves approved. It says, make thyself, we have to really apply
Study to
this
show
word to
yourself
our
approved.
lives. If we don't, and we give excuses all the time, because anybody can give an excuse, if we don't try and strive to be like Jesus was on this earth, and we don't strive to be like him while he walked on this earth, then what's the purpose?
Not going to hell.
So
And it's like some people just see it. Some people just see salvation as
a stepping stone.
Some people just see it as Pastor likes to say, fire insurance.
Yes, and a lot of people think going to hell is a major party with their buds
Yeah,
forever.
well, it's kind of hard to party when you're dancing in brimstone.
Yes.
Yeah, and it says
those are the
weeping and gnashing
non-believers.
of teeth.
Yes.
It's going to be horrible.
Well, and I agree.
Fire and brimstone.
I agree that we need to grow in the Lord.
If there's
That's
no
a
growth,
There's no reward.
so you don't obtain the gifts of the Spirit. If you meet all the criteria,
Oh, see, I disagree with that.
you don't think so? If you don't
Look at the
perform,
church at
then
Corinth.
you don't grow. But you can never fall from God if you don't grow. If you're a babe in Christ, you can't fall from God. You ain't never obtained anything.
Right.
You're still a babe.
Right.
But if you get knowledgeable and you seek it all out and you do grow in the Lord, you can lose the Lord if you're not keeping yourself right. You can cast things away through Satan.
If you once for all apostatize.
You understand what I'm saying though?
Yeah, but
Do you see where I'm coming from?
I see where you're coming
I'm
from,
just trying to
but
clarify
I
something
take
because
those
I
scriptures
know
in
I was
Hebrews.
taught that you can backslide in the Lord.
Yes,
Okay?
you-
As a babe. As a babe. You can't. You can't. Nothing shall separate you from the love of God. Because you ain't grown.
And
you
that
ain't
doesn't
gonna-
matter what age of Christian you are. Nothing can separate us from God's love. We can separate ourselves If we
If we-
choose to walk away.
No, if we are knowledgeable enough to be able to walk away. If we're not knowledgeable enough, we can't turn from something we don't know.
Well, I agree.
You understand?
Yeah.
So if you don't ever obtain the knowledge you're supposed to obtain, how can you lose it? You understand? You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay,
I
I'm
think,
just saying,
I'm
you
not
said
sure what
you
the
know
point,
some
I'm not
really-
sure what the point
But
is.
you said you know some really knowledgeable Christians that
I say I know some people that have been Christian for a long time. I don't know how much they know, but they struggle because we're human.
Mhm.
If we weren't human, we wouldn't struggle. We all struggle.
right.
What we lose in our struggle is our reward.
But I think
If
in
we
order to
don't
blaspheme or to do the unpardonable sin or to cast yourself from God, you have to be a mature Christian. You have to be
grow, the
a mature Christian in order to be able
unpardonable
to do that.
sin anybody can commit, and that's according to Jesus. That is
Blasphemy.
blasphemy against the Holy Spirit, saying that the devil
But you
is
can't,
behind
you
the
can't
works
do
of the
it.
Holy
You
Spirit.
can't do that. You can't.
All right,
even do
diversion
that.
time. I'm going to go to the scriptures.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
I'm just trying to, because Job, they're not knowledgeable. They're not knowledgeable in the Lord. So they didn't have Christ back then. They didn't have the knowledge that we have today. We have the right at our fingertips. We've got so much knowledge. Mhm.
Hebrews chapter 10, verse 26, for if we deliberately keep on sinning after receiving the knowledge of the truth, no further sacrifice for sin is left for us, but only a certain fearful expectation of judgment and a fury of fire that will consume God's enemies. If we deliberately keep on sinning after receiving the knowledge of the truth. So there has to be...
But what's sin for one person is not sin for another.
No, what's sin for one person isn't...
Is not necessarily sin for others. What is your sin, what you consider sin, which in your code of conduct that's in yourself that causes things to be sins to you, are not necessarily sins to me.
Exactly.
So how can you know what I'm saying?
You're nitpicking is what
No,
you
I'm
do.
not nitpicking.
Was that Hebrews?
I think you have to meet
10:26?
certain criteria in order to backslide. You have to be a grown, mature Christian. You have to
Well, I don't
have
think you have to be
performed
that
all 9
mature.
gifts of the Spirit. You've had to be all the way up there in the Lord, and then you can turn and blaspheme Him, and then you can be separated from Him. But if you don't meet those criteria and you're not a mature Christian, you can't meet it. You can't. Nothing can separate you. Sorry, you ain't knowledgeable enough. That's another story. We don't have to talk about
Well,
this.
that's okay.
I'm sorry. I just shouldn't have brought this up.
Well, because there is a place in Hebrews, and I can't find it, of course, right at the moment, where it's all in the Greek aorist tense. If we have once for all been enlightened, once for all tasted of the power of the Holy Spirit, and then fall away once for all.
Right.
It's not talking about just a little backsliding, little
No, I'm
relapsing.
talking about the total backsliding part.
And
where
that's
you can
and
never
that
turn
follows
back to
what
God.
Hebrews says.
Yeah.
Is then yes, we can lose our salvation.
Mhm. That's only if you met all the criteria.
Exactly, and it's not easy to do.
And,
Okay.
and a lot of people don't know that though. They'll judge you right now if they find out that I say, okay, I'm gay. Okay, if they find out, you're going to hell.
Of course you
My
are.
friends, that's what they're going to tell me. You're going to hell. There's no redemption for you. Okay, because you are purposely sinning. You are doing it on purpose. To them, it's a sin. To me, it's not a sin. It's my life. But to them, it's a sin. So they're going to judge me harshly. So they're not looking at it from the way the Bible looks at it.
Right.
Being gay is not in the 10 Commandments.
Well, we won't go there. That's another
story.
10-hour
So-
teaching. So final comments. Now that we've taken a little trip down Hebrews Lane,
The verse that you gave us in Hebrews, was that 10:26?
10:26.
Okay. Just want to make sure I got
There
it.
is another one, I just couldn't find it, about
That's okay.
it all is what you basically is what you were saying.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
and having grown up Methodist, of course I believe you can lose your salvation. So,
But you can't lose it as a baby.
no.
You can't. I mean, you can put it aside. You can trample on it. You can
Well,
do all that. But you
okay,
are not
and I-
separating yourself from the love of God. God is still there, and He's still working on your heart.
And
He's still
and-
messing with you.
And I will
You know?
say this.
But when you actually blaspheme the Holy Spirit the way you're supposed to blaspheme it, you have to have
Well,
been
you're
a
not
knowledgeable
supposed to
dude.
buy
I mean, you're, you know, in order to separate yourself from God.
But
you know.
let me just say this, so that Facebook audience, you don't, I just want to clarify this. When I came out in 1985, I had been a Christian for 12 years, and I had grown quite a bit. I had preached, I led groups, stuff like that, but I came out and I ran from God. I ran as hard and as fast as I could because I didn't want anything to do with him, because I figured, you know what, you were supposed to make me straight and you didn't. So I don't want anything to do with you. Now apparently I hadn't reached that point yet because God wasn't finished with me. And I think God will go to the ends of the earth for us even when we're running from him. But yes, there does come a point, if you apostatize, if you denounce God, there does come a point where you stand in great, and I'm not going to judge anybody, but you stand in great danger of losing your salvation. So that kind of sums up that whole discussion. So, all right, last comments. Did we already have those, I guess?
Yes, we had those.
So Facebook, thank you. This got a little weird tonight. Well, not weird. It just got
Off track.
sidetracked. We got sidetracked, which is okay. That sometimes happens. So I want to thank you all again for watching, and remember to go to our YouTube channel, uppercase BOHM space lowercase global. You can see this teaching and all our teachings for the last almost going on 2 years. You can see all of those on our YouTube page. So be sure and go there, and please subscribe. Let us, that way you get notified when a new video is uploaded. Again, thank you so much, and God bless.